Most men discover their marriage is over when divorce papers arrive in the mail. I found out in my own basement, and by the time I understood what was really going on, my name was already attached to things I had never seen or touched. My name is Lewis Jackson. I am 51 years old. I own a simple 3-bedroom house in Columbus, Ohio. I coach kids soccer on Saturday mornings, and until just 11 days ago, I honestly believed I was one of the lucky men in life. We will get into that soon, but before anything else, do us a small favor. Subscribe. Many people watch and never press it, but it costs you nothing, and it means a lot to us. Tap the like button too, and leave your thoughts in the comments after you finish listening. You will enjoy it here. Now let me talk about my wife. Her name is Claire Ann Jackson. We have been married for 15 years, together for 18. She likes lavender candles, true crime podcasts, which looking back maybe should have been a warning sign the size of a mountain. And she always takes her coffee with exactly 1 sugar and a small splash of oat milk. I know this woman, at least I thought I did. Everything started on a Tuesday in February, which is already a terrible month in my opinion. Claire was in Atlanta visiting her college friend Donna. She had been gone for 3 days. I was enjoying what I called my bachelor routine. Cereal for dinner, sports running on every screen, and wearing the same hoodie for almost 2 days straight. Honestly, I felt fine. Then the furnace began making a noise, not the usual winter groan or the normal clicks you expect when the weather gets too cold. This was different, low, steady, almost like metal slowly chewing on metal. Something about it felt wrong. I called the first HVAC company I found on Google. A technician named Dale arrived in about 40 minutes. Dale Briggs, from Briggs & Sons Heating and Cooling. He was a friendly guy, big mustache, faint smell of coffee mixed with machine oil. "I'll need 20 minutes, he said as he went down to the basement. I said fine. I made a sandwich, watched part of a sports highlight reel, just relaxing. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dale, and it came from my basement. "Mr. Jackson, there is a locked door behind your storage shelves. Who is inside?" I actually laughed at first. I replied, "Dale, there is no locked door back there." 3 dots appeared, then another message. "Sir, I can hear breathing inside, and there are 4 padlocks on the outside." I stopped chewing. 4 padlocks on the outside. That detail didn't fully land at first, but it should have. Locks on the outside don't keep people out. They keep something in. That is not security. That is containment. I ran down the basement stairs in seconds. Dale was standing near the old metal shelves Claire had insisted we keep, even though I had suggested getting rid of them multiple times. The shelves were slightly pulled away from the wall. Behind them was a door I had never seen in 15 years of living in that house. 15 years. It was a plain, hollow door, painted the same gray tone as the basement wall. If those shelves were pushed flush, you would never notice it existed. 4 heavy locks were fixed on it, and from behind it, I could hear slow, steady breathing. "Call the police," I told Dale. "I already did," he said. Officers arrived within minutes. I stood in my own basement, feeling like I had walked into someone else's life. They cut the locks. My heart was pounding the whole time. When the door opened, the room was empty. Not just empty, completely stripped. Bare concrete floor, 1 bulb hanging overhead, not even switched on. A small Bluetooth speaker in the corner, still slightly warm. A cheap burner phone on a cardboard box, its screen cracked. The breathing we heard was not real. It was a recording. Officer Tate, a young cop who looked like he had just finished school, picked up the phone carefully. "This was activated recently," he said, "within the last hour." So someone had triggered it while Dale was still in the basement. That's when it hit me. Someone knew he would come. Someone waited. The recording was designed to scare him enough to text me. The text was meant to make me call police. The police arrival was part of the plan. This wasn't random. It was staged. 48 hours later, they found a storage unit receipt, and I don't know exactly when it happened, but at some point, I stopped being just a homeowner and started being treated like a suspect. Detective Roy Callahan showed up at my kitchen table with a legal pad and asked if I had ever rented a storage unit on Mercer Road. I said no, but according to records, I had. Twice. Cash payments, my name on everything. They opened Unit 114. Inside were women's clothes, a prepaid debit card linked to my identity, and a photograph of a woman I had never seen before. She looked around 30, dark hair, smiling like she had no idea what would later be done with her image. "Do you know her?" Callahan asked. "No," I said. "I've never seen her before." And I meant it. Completely. But something inside me broke when I got home. I went upstairs to our bedroom, to the shelf above Claire's nightstand, where she keeps her books. I pulled them down one by one. Inside one of them, I found her, the same woman from the storage unit photo. Her name was Angela Pruitt. The picture was tucked inside Claire's worn copy of In Cold Blood, as if it belonged there, hidden but not really hidden. I sat on the bed we had shared for 15 years and held that photo in my hands. My house, my marriage, everything suddenly felt unfamiliar. How long had that picture been there? How long had Claire been living a double life right beside me? At 51, I used to think the worst thing that could happen was losing health, money, or stability. Now I understood something else. The worst thing is realizing the person you trusted most may have never truly been who you believed. If you've been following along, a small reminder, like and subscribe if you want more stories like this. It helps more than you think. Here's something nobody tells you about being set up by your own spouse. The hardest part is not the evidence. It is accepting that nothing about it was accidental. No confusion, no mistake, no sudden breakdown. It was planned. By this point, it had been 6 days since Dale Briggs texted me from my basement. 6 days since police officers stood inside a hidden room in my house and looked at me like I was dangerous. 6 days since Detective Callahan started appearing more often, sometimes just parked nearby in an unmarked car. Claire returned from Atlanta 2 days after everything happened. I hadn't told her everything on the phone, only that something strange had occurred. When she walked through the door, she looked like the perfect worried wife. Soft eyes, careful expression, hands on my face. "Louis, what happened? Are you okay?" For a short moment, I believed her again. She cried when I showed her the basement room. She asked all the right questions, said all the right things. That's terrifying. Who would do this? Should we get a lawyer? That last question stayed with me later. When Callahan returned days later and told us about Unit 114, I watched Claire carefully. There was a tiny pause in her expression, just a fraction of a second. Then she recovered instantly. "This is a setup," she said. "Someone is framing my husband." Callahan looked between us. "How do you know it's a setup?" "Because I know my husband," she replied. I replayed that moment again and again afterward. She never said it was impossible. She never said I wouldn't do it. She simply said she knew me. Careful wording, controlled certainty. A friend of mine, Gary Howell, has known me since college. He works in insurance fraud investigation, so his job is literally spotting when stories are built instead of lived. I called him and told him everything. He stayed quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "How many joint accounts do you and Claire have?" 3. Checking, savings, household card. Who controls them? I started to answer, then stopped. Claire did. She had taken over the finances years ago, around year 2 of our marriage. When I said I hated budgeting, I never questioned it again. Gary told me to pull every statement I could find. I did. What I found didn't look dramatic. No huge withdrawals, no obvious theft, nothing loud. Instead, it was slow and careful. Small transfers of $100, strange subscription charges, occasional cash withdrawals just under reporting limits. It was invisible on purpose. Over 7 years, it totaled just over $60,000. I sat at my desk late at night staring at those numbers, not afraid exactly, more like overwhelmed by scale. This wasn't sudden, it was patient. The first strange transaction dated back 14 months after our wedding, which meant this had started almost immediately. Gary came over the next morning. We laid everything out on the dining table. Bank records, police notes, storage documents, everything I had collected. He didn't speak for a long time, just studied it carefully, like someone looking at a structure that has been built far too well. And then he finally said quietly that what he was looking at was far worse than I understood. But I am an extremely patient man, and patience turns out to be the only real currency that matters when you are playing a long game. Dennis ordered the monitor online, paid in cash at a UPS kiosk machine, and shipped it to a P.O. box. It was the kind of careful operational discipline that 18 years in the Army apparently permanently installs in a person. I drove back home on Saturday, told Claire I was feeling better, and allowed her to hug me in the doorway while I quietly counted her heartbeats against my chest. I felt nothing at all. That was the strangest part. No anger, no sadness, just a cold kind of clarity. I installed the monitor on a Sunday afternoon while Claire was out grocery shopping. It was a small wireless device hidden neatly behind a decorative plant on the sunroom windowsill, a plant that had sat in the same place for 15 years, untouched by either of us. It took me only 4 minutes to set everything up. I drove to Dennis that evening, checked the audio feed on his laptop to confirm it was clean, then went back home in time for dinner. Claire made pasta and asked if I was starting to feel like myself again. "Getting there," I said. She smiled softly and refilled my water glass like nothing in the world was wrong. I waited 19 days. 19 days of being Louis Jackson, the loyal husband, the cooperative resident, and the casual subject of a missing persons investigation. 19 days of answering Detective Callahan's questions calmly, of letting Claire hold my hand in front of him, of watching her perform concern so perfectly that even I had moments, small, confusing moments, where I wondered if I had imagined everything out of grief or stress. Then, in the 3rd week on a Thursday evening, Renee Gallagher came to visit. I made myself disappear from the house, told Claire I was going to Gary's for the evening, kissed her on the cheek, and drove 4 blocks before pulling over and opening my phone. The audio was perfect, clear as if they were sitting right next to me. At first, they talked about normal things: Renee's work, a cousin's wedding, a restaurant in Cincinnati worth the drive. For a few minutes, I almost convinced myself I had been wrong, that I had placed a listening device in my own sunroom based on paranoia, grief, and Gary Hall's old insurance fraud instincts. Then Claire's voice changed. It was very subtle, like a musician shifting keys on the same instrument. Same voice, same person, but suddenly different. She became quieter, more precise. The warmth slowly drained out of her tone like water leaving a sink, steady and complete. "He has no idea," Claire said. There was a pause on the other end. "You're certain? He's walking around here making me coffee in the morning. Roy is treating him like a suspect, and he's just Louis. He's always been the same. He can't see past what is right in front of him. He never could." "And the woman? Angela?" Renee asked. "Safe," Claire replied calmly. "She agreed to disappear for 60 days. She is in Phoenix. I paid her enough that she will not speak. And by the time those 60 days are over, Louis will be too buried to matter." Another pause followed. "Claire," Renee said carefully, uncertain now, "what actually happens to him?" "He becomes the answer to a question the police are already building," Claire said without hesitation. "They already have his name, his prints, his financial records. I just need to let it finish forming. In a few more weeks, it will not even need me anymore. It will have its own weight." "And you?" Renee asked. "Somewhere warm," Claire said lightly. Then she laughed. It was an easy laugh, relaxed and real, the kind of laugh you give when everything is going exactly according to plan. I sat in my car 4 blocks away, listening to my wife laugh about the structure of my destruction, and something inside me went completely still again, cold, quiet, final. I did not call Dennis. I did not call Gary. I did not call Detective Callahan. Not yet. I need to tell you about Angela Pruitt because she matters in all of this. 2 days after Renee's visit, I hired a private investigator named Carl Upton, retired Columbus PD, recommended by Gary, the kind of man who looks like a walking filing cabinet and behaves like one too. I gave Carl one simple instruction: find Angela Pruitt. It took him 6 days. She was in Phoenix, exactly like Claire had said, staying in a mid-range hotel on Camelback Road, paying cash, registered under a slightly altered name. Carl took photographs, confirmed her presence, and even obtained a signed statement from her, a woman who, it turned out, had not fully understood what she was agreeing to and became much more uncomfortable once a private investigator calmly explained what accessory meant in a hotel lobby. Angela Pruitt was not a criminal mastermind. She was simply someone who needed money and made a very bad decision. She told us everything: how Claire had found her, how she had been paid, how she had been instructed to stay out of sight for 60 days and keep silent. Her hands shook while she signed the statement. She cried for almost 10 minutes afterward. Carl stayed with her until she calmed down because Carl, surprisingly, is a decent man underneath all that rigid exterior. Now I had 2 things: the recorded conversation from the sunroom and a signed statement from the woman who was supposed to be missing but clearly wasn't. 2 pieces of evidence Claire did not know existed. And here is what I did not do. I did not go straight to the police with it, because anything handed over by someone already under suspicion becomes part of a long legal process, a slow public fight where Claire would immediately hire lawyers, shut down, and spend the next year and a half dismantling everything I had built from the other side. And now I knew she was very good at dismantling things, so I chose a simpler path. On a Friday evening, while Claire sat in the sunroom reading a book, in cold blood, of all things, the irony of it, I sat at the kitchen table and sent 2 files from an email account she had never seen to a phone number she did not recognize. 1 audio file, 1 photo of Angela Pruitt standing in Phoenix holding that day's newspaper. No message, no explanation, no name. Then I closed the laptop, washed my coffee mug, and went to bed. About 40 minutes later, she came downstairs. Through barely open eyes, I watched her stand in the bedroom doorway for a long time, phone in her hand, completely still. In all the years I had known her, I had never once seen Claire Jackson stand still like that. She was always moving, always adjusting, always controlling something. Now she just stood there, like someone who had heard a sound they could not locate. Good. The next morning, I drove to Detective Callahan's office and placed Carl Upton's full report on his desk. The statements, the photos, the financial records, the call logs, everything carefully organized in a navy blue folder with a metal clasp. I am, after all, a very thorough man. Callahan read it without speaking for 11 minutes. "Mr. Jackson," he finally said. "Roy," I replied. "I think we both know I didn't rent that storage unit." He looked at me for a long moment, then reached for his phone. Claire was arrested on a Tuesday morning, 14 charges in total: fraud, conspiracy, obstruction, and more. They walked her out of our house in handcuffs at 9 a.m., on a morning cold enough that you could see breath hanging in the air. I stood in the doorway and watched. She looked back at me once, only once, as they guided her toward the patrol car, and for the first time in 18 years, I could not read her face. No calculation, no strategy, no hidden angle, just a woman looking at me. I nodded slightly, because here is what Claire never understood about me, the mistake at the center of everything she built. She spent years studying me, what I did, how I spoke, how I slept, how I signed my name. But she never once studied what I was thinking. I am not a dramatic man. I do not raise my voice. I do not break things. I do not need to win arguments. I only need the final move. She spent 15 years building a prison for me. I built hers in 19 days. And somewhere out there now, Claire Ann Jackson is probably looking over her shoulder for a ghost she created herself. A man she underestimated. A husband she thought she understood completely. She knew my signature. She never understood my spine. And that was always going to be her only mistake. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.